Welcome to Decades, hosted by Chris Rubio. Decades is a show made up of 5 generations of people brought together to discuss topics you wouldn't normally talk about with others. The goal of the show is to learn by having some good, possibly heated discussions, without losing the simple fact that it's okay to talk to different people with different opinions other than your own.
Well, welcome to Decades, everybody, on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and so on. You see, we're a little short-staffed today, no pun intended. I know your screen is.
But high
not,
quality.
But
high
yes,
quality.
High quality. We brought in the best people today, and your screen, and you are not seeing anything. Yes, Rubio has not gotten shorter, nor has he gotten better looking. I am hosting the show today. Rubio is internet-less. I think the raccoons ran away from generating his internet or something. So we decided the show must go on, and I think he's watching from somewhere or chasing after the raccoons. Anyway, glad that you're all here with us, the 3 that are here and the ones that will be coming sooner. Bill, Cruz, and Alex and I are going to just talk about some things. Before we start, I just want to give a shout-out to my buddy Alan Cole. He did a 65-mile march over the weekend for Operation Enduring Warrior to support the fallen soldiers. He's been very involved in that. That was a great job for him. And just if you ever get a chance, go out to oew.org and check them out and so on. So, guys, let's get started. We'll go off the list of questions that I had brought up. The first one is talking about Robert Kennedy Jr. has joined the race. He's got a vice president candidate. What kind of impact do you think he will have in the race? Positive, negative, etc. We'll start with our senior panelist, Bill Geiser. What do you think, Bill?
Well, I think he's legit. Number one. I think number two, he's got the brand name. The Kennedy name. There are certain things about him I like. There are certain things I'm not a big fan of, but he's a serious candidate, and that's what we need in this race: serious candidates. So I'm okay.
Yeah, that's good. How about you, Cruz? What do you think as the young man?
Yeah, I think he's a legitimate candidate. I just don't think he's going to gather more votes than either Donald Trump or Joe Biden is necessarily. Like Bill said, he's got the family name behind him. He's definitely going to take away some nepotism for it a little bit. But I think he's a real candidate. I think if there was more push for him to join a party and be less of an independent, he would have a way better chance. But, he's sticking to his guns. He wants to be an independent. Good for him. Let him ride.
Excellent. All right. How about, what do you think? What say you, Alex?
Well, I think he's also a legit candidate. I think he's more threat to Biden than to Trump, because people who are still kind of Democrats, but they don't like Biden and they don't like Trump, they're going to, cast their votes for Kennedy.
Okay, that sounds good. So going based on that, a lot of people, because I think I've mentioned to multiple people on this panel and in our circles, is that I'm neither. I don't like either of the candidates. I'm not even really fond of the third party, the independent. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. So and when I bring that to people, they say, well, if you don't vote for Biden, you're basically voting for Trump. So if you vote for that third party candidate, why can't we as Americans get a third party up and running? Other European countries do. We have two parties that just run. What do you think, Alex? Why can't we get a third party that's established?
Well, I think primarily because financial support is not there to support that third party. People support either Democrats or Republicans, but there is not enough money, not enough influence to create support for a third party, at least at this point.
All right.
It might change eventually, but it's not now.
Yeah, it's a big money game, and not only does it take massive amounts of money, but the back end infrastructure, the organization, the feet on the street. I mean, running a presidential campaign is a major undertaking, and I just don't see any third party or independent party rivaling what the Democrat and Republican party apparatus have built over, the last 100 years. So you can talk about independents coming in there, but it's not going to happen. I mean, what really damaged Kennedy was the same thing that damaged Bernie on the previous election, was the Democratic Party unilaterally took him out in the backyard and shot him, wouldn't let him run. And that's what they did to Kennedy. They don't want Kennedy running against Biden. They want Biden as their guy. So, which I'm a little surprised. I thought for sure they tried to replace him because he just doesn't seem to be fit for office.
What do you think? What do you think, Cruz?
Yeah, I think that both parties have way too much money. And it's never going to allow an independent to really slide their way into the race per se. But I also think the media has a huge role in it too. It looks better if it's a one-on-one candidate, kind of similar to like these big old boxing posters you'd see. If you throw in a third candidate into there and try and cause all this drama, it's just going to be way too confusing. And I think that the media has this option to kind of introduce third-party candidates, but they choose not to. And that's why you see a lot of the publicity and endorsements going to Joe Biden and Donald Trump, especially on the news. I think every news source in the world last Thursday was talking about Donald Trump's, this and that, or Joe Biden's son and this and that, but no one's really talking about Kennedy's. So, it's just, it is what it is, but I think the media has a lot of impact on it as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in your opinions, I don't know if you guys were familiar or heard about No Labels. No Labels was the third party that was going to try to get a diversified candidates in, like a Republican and a Democrat. Like maybe a Republican was the president and a Democrat was the VP, or vice versa. If there was money, are you guys saying that there's not enough money in there to basically split it between three parties, or there's not enough infrastructure in place to do that?
I think the issue is for a third party, non-affiliated with the other two, to come in and run a serious campaign. First of all, it's massively expensive, but it's going to take years, literally years, for them to build up the organizational infrastructure to go do this.
All right, that makes sense.
People, a lot of volunteers. Look at how many. Just like I think growing up in Chicago with like all the precinct captains and things like that. I mean, they've been doing this shit for years. It's going to be hard for a third party,
right?
Unless they get started now with the intent to run, 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. All right, what do you think, Alex?
Well, I also think on the topic of why Biden, hasn't been replaced by somebody else, although everybody sees him as an old man who doesn't know what to do, and without his teleprompter and his handlers, he's basically useless. I think it goes deeper, because if they replace Biden, most of the Democrats also don't want Kamala Harris to be in his shoes, and kicking her out would make him lose some black votes, So that's why they kept them both kind of there and decided to run as is.
That makes sense. That's a good point. How about you, Chris? What do you think?
I honestly don't know. We're still talking about like infrastructure and stuff.
Yeah, just like if there was an actual third party, like No Labels.
Mm-hmm.
Lieberman, before he passed away, was kind of started this movement where they were looking for a third party candidate that was more middle of the road, that they were even talking about getting a Republican and a Democrat basically to run on the ticket, to run side by side.
Mm-hmm.
Is that model even possible where we are currently today?
No, but I mean, is it possible? Yes, but not in today's society, considering that the level of political, quote unquote, like violence is a little bit heightened. I think people are a lot more on edge and people disagree a lot more now than ever before. So I think that option isn't necessarily feasible, and I don't think it would be necessarily the right choice for America per se.
That makes sense. Well, let us welcome in Craig Hannum, and we'll get Craig's viewpoint on this. Craig, we're talking about basically third party. Is a third party viable? We were talking about Robert Kennedy. Is he for real? Is he going to make an impact? And then we kind of migrated into a third party model. Does a third party work here in the States? What do you think about Robert Kennedy and his viability for making a run? And what do you think about a third party, like a third party actually in America?
Well, besides the fact that he's got the Kennedy name, that's one thing. But I don't think the Kennedy name is strong enough to be a primary candidate, hence why he's a third party candidate. I think it's just designed to try to upset either side, either the Democrats or Republicans. Because you're talking, tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 people who will actually vote for him. It's not a primary candidate, and like Cruz was saying, he doesn't have the money.
Right.
You need that money. You saw what's happened in the past, 48 hours? Well, actually, since Friday with Trump, and how much money he's had donated toward his campaign. That's what helps out elections. It's money. So I think it's just more, it could be like let's see if we can put a wrench in the mix kind of thing. That's where I think where he sits.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Well, I think, to kind of put a bow on this topic and kind of move to our next one is, I think the unfortunate part is that it's all about the money, and we're here in the two parties, and we got to find kind of where everybody stands. Well,
right.
All right, yeah, well, that's good. I guess let's we'll move on, and then we'll take a break after the next topic. Let's talk about our mental health, the mental health, and things of that nature, and I'm going to start with Craig on this one because this is kind of right in his wheelhouse. I'll give him that fat curveball to hit. Now, how do we start destigmatizing saying the word suicide, talking about men's mental health, where vulnerability is not seen as some kind of weakness, but a strength in that, hey, yeah, I can do this, but I can't. I'm struggling. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good thing for guys to be vulnerable. It really is. And you're right. The whole stigma behind suicide, mental wellness, mental health, it's horrible. It's the worst. Not to mention the fact that every time somebody comes forward and says, hey, I'm feeling down. What's up? Well, I'm struggling. Where are you struggling in? You tell them you find out all the things they're struggling in, and you ask them that question that that's hard to ask is, hey man, are you thinking about suicide because of this? I think what shocks people is when they say yes. It scares them. Imagine being on the recipient. If you're the recipient of that conversation, yeah, it is scary. And that's the problem. That's why we have to get rid of the stigma behind it. Because I tell parents all the time, this topic of suicide is going to be harder than the birds and the bees talk with your kid. Tenfold.
Absolutely.
And if you can't have an honest conversation about it at the dinner table, where you're going to allow your child to open up and express their vulnerabilities that they're learning at a very young age, they're not going to do it when they get older. And
100%.
men were the worst at this. I saw it with the military population. You have these tough, hardened dudes, battle hardened. I mean, decorated, experts on the battlefield, very lethal in their task. When we start talking about feelings, they didn't want to open up because they thought vulnerability at the time was a weakness. Then they worry about everything else
Exactly.
when it comes to the stigma.
Exactly. Hey, Cruz, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? On kind of opening up?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important on all sides of it, especially being June. It's men's mental health month, and I think that there's no real better time to talk about it right now. I think it starts with the youth and then makes their way up, truly with like a lot of things. But if you can kind of reach out to kids, especially young men in particular, going through like those teenage phases, and kind of talk to them and tell them like, hey, like, we can talk through this, we can work through these things and work through these situations. Because right now, I think young men in particular are being, put down a lot by society and being told that you shouldn't be who you are. You shouldn't be allowed to come out and talk about your feelings. You shouldn't be this, or you shouldn't be who you believe you are. And I think that's incorrect. And I think that's invaluable information to give to young men, especially who might be going through really troubling times. So I think connecting with youth right off the bat and just, addressing the hard conversations that need to be had. Don't be afraid of anything. Just, talk about it man to man and just, address the situation. And it's always the people who you never really expect too. Like when we go back and talk about Jim a little bit, it's like you have to go and kind of address those difficult situations, or else then we're having the conversation of at his funeral instead of to his face,
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And just like the golfer, I mean, there's a lot of men out there struggling who look fine. I mean, professional golfer walks off after his round and takes his own life. I mean, society's got to process that. That's not normal nor good. We got to really take that. Alex, what are you thinking?
Well, I think we need to talk about mental health issues often and openly. And for example, let's say each and every one of us usually goes to our primary care at least yearly to get checkup, to get our blood test and other things, and doctor tells, hey, you need to increase your vitamin D or increase this or decrease that, or I'm going to give you a new pill for your blood pressure because, it's high and stuff. I think it should be a regular checkup on mental health, to try to gauge whether somebody is having an issue or not and how to prevent that issue to make somebody to take his or her own life.
I think that's good. Yeah, you're exact. That's a good point. I've talked to my therapist before, and the mind is a muscle. It's like any other part of the body, and we don't necessarily treat it like a muscle. And it's that part of the body that we don't. We're like, okay, it's just there. Bill, what are you thinking?
Well, I mean, it's clearly a problem, and I agree with Cruz to one extent that young men are susceptible, but I've got some friends that are former cops, and I was really surprised to learn there's a rather higher percentage of suicide with police officers too. I mean, you think of these high stress jobs where you're not only under pressure to perform in the job, but there's society things, there's other stuff going on in the world that really they carry it on their shoulders. So you got to kind of look at the professions, but ultimately I think it boils down to the people that we as individuals are close to. We're not going to have much impact with people we hardly know. So it's really incumbent on us to reach out to those that are close to us and just check in, see how they're doing. Those are the ones that you can impact.
Right.
That's the challenge.
Go ahead, Craig.
Well, honestly, Bill's right. That's the challenge. And like Cruz was saying, learn it at a young age. If you can learn resiliency at a young age, because as you get older, life's not going to get easier. You're going to look back in your 20s when you turn 35 and like, man, that was easy. And then so on and so forth with life. But Bill's got a point. The amount of people that are at risk is huge, especially the first responders, veterinarians, professional athletes. We found out recently that professional rodeo athletes are high on the scale when it comes to suicide. The problem is not everybody is highly trained to pick up on the subtle indicators to where you could be walking around the grocery store and like, whoa, I see something odd with this gentleman. I'm gonna go talk to him. I do it all the time. I have no problem walking up to people and saying, hey, you look like you're struggling with something. Are you okay? But I'm trained, and that's my goal. I want to get all of us trained. Someone asked me.
Hey, Craig. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's a great point that you bring up. And as Cruz said, June's Men's Mental Health Month, and for the people watching, you're very versed in this topic. You can share your story, but I think maybe you could share with our viewers, something they could, a little thing they could take away from this episode and say, hey, okay, now when I'm walking around my Wegmans or on my Harris Teeter or something, I at least know this in the back of my head, and if something kind of looks off, I could maybe help that man or woman or team. What do you like a little tip?
The obvious indicators are easy. If you know somebody very well and you see an obvious change in behavior, that's easy to identify. Somebody that you know is very talkative, all of a sudden they're not. Or someone who's always quiet and now they're talkative. When they say little things, the subtle part, when they say things like, I'm not sleeping very well, that's an invitation. What do you mean you're not sleeping well? What's going on? You got lumps in your bed? What's happening? No, I'm not sleeping well because I can't shut my brain off. Go deeper in that conversation. If they say things like, man, my home life is a wreck right now. Do you want to share it with me? What's going on? Let them vent. Then if you are listening to their story and you hear real stressors going on in their life, ask them, okay, well, where's that leading you? Where are you emotionally? I wouldn't go down the question of where are you mentally, because that's a different avenue, but emotional, because suicide is a negative response to a life issue. It's behavior. And we used to say things like, why would you think like that? What are you thinking? How could you think that? No.
Right.
Why are you feeling like that? What made you feel like this? Go into the feelings and the emotional aspect, because that's what it is. And that's how we get guys to open up, especially men. Ask them an honest question. Are you thinking about suicide because of all these things? Or I'm asking that question because here's what I'm noticing. And let them validate it. All we're going to do is say, okay, tell me your story, man. How can I help you with this? And I see that, we're putting up on the ticker tape right there, 988. I've been to those call centers, and the purpose they serve is good for someone who has no one else to talk to, truly. But how we're going to save individual lives is with our connections. When you know that I can call Ed in the middle of the night, hey man, I need a vent. I'm stressed out about something, and we're going to listen.
Right.
I had a guy call me today. He's a colonel in the United States Army. He's in charge of a tactical medical unit that's getting ready to deploy. And he's got some stuff going on in his unit. I haven't talked to this guy in a few years, but I'll never get upset at somebody for waking me up in the middle of the night. And that's where we have to be receptive. That's how we get rid of the fear that people have of the vulnerability. As long as we're receptive on the other end, going, yeah, man, I see what you're going through.
That's the key. You just kind of hit the nail on the head, is that we as the receivers have to be receptive and cannot be judgmental in that receiving of that, because that's what everybody, I'll talk. I mean, from my vulnerability was a bad word for me. I never liked it until I started kind of processing what it meant from a personal standpoint, and then realizing that vulnerability is more of a strength than a weakness if you reframe it. However, there's four of us that grew up in the world of, suck it up and go, be tough and do that. So kind of changing that mindset, we need to be the people receptive. That's great. Before we go to break, anybody have one last comment on this topic, where we will put a bow on it and take us to commercial? Once, twice. All right, we will go to commercial, and when we come back, we will do something a little bit less intense.
This tech tip talks about Microsoft's latest AI computers that include a special new versions of Windows that remembers everything you do on your PC. It's called Recall, and the feature is meant to help you find that web page document representations you were working on more easily. It also has some serious privacy implications. Recall takes snapshots of your screen throughout the day and then makes them searchable either through a timeline or by a keyword. Based on research that we've done, people spend 1 hour a day at work just trying to find things, said Matt Barlow, who runs Surface Marketing at Microsoft. Recall gives you basically a virtual photographic memory of everything you ever done on your PC. This tech tip from the show called DK is brought to you by Alex on Tech.
Thank you, Alex on Tech. Check him out. I know he's talking about doing something more, doing a show. So stay tuned for more on that. Okay, we've had some intense topics. Now we're going to kind of lighten it up a little bit. As you know, we take questions. The Decades panel throws in questions, creates questions. If you want the Decades panel to deal with answer a question, please feel free to post it in the chat or email us at decadesshow24@gmail.com. Okay. Should AI pick your significant other? Should AI pick yours? Let's assume we're all single. We're going to go with the youngest dude first. Hey, Cruz, what say you about should AI pick your wife or girl? Yeah, let's say girlfriend. Should it?
Choose wisely.
Absolutely not. No, I think I mean, maybe to help you find someone in general or find a group of people that you might, find similarities with. But there's a huge law of attraction that comes with relationships and dating in general. And if you're not, I mean, they can be the best person in the world, but if you're not physically attracted to them, then there's no real purpose in it. And I think AI might be able to help you find someone with common similarities the same way all of these dating apps might do. But I don't think it's going to be anything past that. And if you choose your girlfriend or boyfriend off of AI, I think you have some serious reconsidering to do about your relationships.
Well, all right, Alex, you've got a good laugh going, and this may have even been from you, if I recall. So, what do you think? Yeah, I know you've been married, and I think most of the four of us are married. So, just if we were back in our day, what do you think about AI picking your significant other?
Back in the day, when I was, growing up and, started to date and, interacting with girls and whatnot, of course, we didn't have any AI. We hardly had personal computers, basically at homes. My first PC that I saw was in college in late 80s. And I would say I kind of agree with Cruz. Yes, AI can advise you, can give you, like its opinion based on your preferences, but it would be still you to pick and choose, who to go on date with, there is no way, there's no other way, so that's what I think.
Bill, how about you? What do you think? Senior date, if you were single in this later in life, AI's here, you're turning on AI. What do you think? Is it picking your significant other for you?
I don't think so. I think you're better off letting your heart be your guide, not Siri.
Yeah, well, I think we've all seen probably the Instagram or TikTok post that has the guy calling Siri Alexa and Alexa Siri or something like that, and she gets all upset. What are you thinking, Craig? You think?
Oh, hell no, man.
AI?
No. Emphatically, absolutely 100% no. Given my track record before I got married, not my first marriage, the one that's awesome now, and I hope she's watching. I'm married to a hottie, and if I could go back, say 5 years where I was dating, I know it would backfire, because I'm squishy inside, and somehow I think AI would just sign me up with a dude. And no.
That's great. Sign you up with a dude. Oh. Yes. As I am with a very much a hottie who I've been privileged to be with for, it'll be 30 years on the 18th. God bless her soul. I don't think AI could have put something together that would have lasted that long, because I would have, it would have done a scan of me and then try to run it through these algorithms. I probably would have broken AI. So we'll just leave it at that. Okay. So the overall consensus on that is AI should be used for anything except relationships. All right. So staying with kind of our fun stuff. Let's talk about food. If you could only eat one food the rest of your life, what would it be? Cruz, let's start. We'll start with Alex on this one. Alex, what are you thinking?
Well, I like seafood, so I wouldn't mind eating, for example, lobster tail, as one meal all the time.
Lobster tail, okay, that sounds good. Greg, what are you thinking? What's your go-to food for the rest of your life if you had to choose something?
Bow tie pasta with my wife's vodka sauce in a heartbeat.
Wow, all right. little carbo loading from a man.
I'm down.
Bill, what are you thinking?
Steak and eggs.
Ah, yeah,
That
that's a good one. Steak and eggs. Why steak and eggs? Any particular reason?
Lots of protein and super dense nutrition.
That's good. All right, Mr. Cruz, and then I'll go last. What are you saying?
I'm going chicken wings.
All right.
One, because they're my favorite food, but two, there's also a ton of variety with the flavors, and I think we're not taking that into consideration here. You know, you're gonna have to have this meal, the food, the rest of your life. You know.
That
So
is
to be able
true.
to
That is
have
a good point.
Some like little variation. You know, one day I'm feeling spicy, the next day I'm feeling sweet. You know, it's just I can do what I want. You know,
That's a good idea. Jim Scarano, I'm not putting your comment on because your comment is the same as my comment, so I'm going to say mine first, so everybody thinks you followed me. Mine's pizza, hands down. I could eat pizza, every version of pizza, and there's Jim's. Jim copied me as I was saying it. He typed it up, so we'll just go with that. No, I could. It's similar to what It's similar to what you're saying, Cruz. You can do many varieties, and I can do. When we order pizza at my house, I don't even get involved because I will eat anything in there for the most part. I mean, no, not for the most part. I will. So everybody else chooses what they like, and I'm like, that's good because that's just how I would live. All right, so we have a good wide variety of what everybody would eat. I think the kind of most interesting one is the seafood with the lobster tail. But anyway, that's good. I feel my gout from the seafood kind of picking up. Anyway, okay, we're gonna take it. We got two more, and I think this next one's gonna be kind of interesting. If you could go back, the next one is go back in time and talk to your younger self, and you're going to talk to your 18-year-old self. So you're right out of high school. Maybe going to college, maybe going to military, maybe going into the workforce. Kind of and you're going back in time. You are who you are today. You're going back in time. What are you telling yourself? Hey, let's go with you, Craig. What are you saying to you? What are you telling your 18-year-old self?
always bet on the Red Sox. One day they will win the World Series.
Fair enough. Anything else?
Hey, the first time that you're in Baghdad and you're under fire, go right instead of left. Maybe.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. All right. How about you, Bill? What are you telling everybody? What are you telling your 18-year-old self?
I think it would be to focus on consistent improvement versus perfection. I grew up at a time where, athletically, business-wise, academically, whatever, you were focusing on being the best or being perfect at what you do. And what I've come to realize is that the real superpower belongs to those people who never stop improving. Every single day is not wasted. And when you compound that improvement over time, you leave people in the dust. It's not even it's nothing close. So focus on improvement, not perfection.
That's excellent. That's a good point. How about you, Alex? What are you saying?
Well, if I was given myself advice as an 18-year-old, I would have told myself to leave Soviet Union ASAP.
There you go. Okay, leave this. Yep. That's perfect. And Cruz, I know you're not too far from 18.
Yeah, it's only like
you're probably you're the closest, but you've lived enough of your life. So what if in that short time, in the 4 years or 5 years, whatever it might be, what would you tell yourself?
It was kind of something like I started telling myself, especially this past year, with like football coming into an end and college coming to an end. It's kind of like embrace the shitty parts of life. Like there's gonna be times where like shit hits the fan, especially like throughout season. Obviously we didn't have the kind of year we wanted, but like there was a lot of times where I focused on how bad everything sucked and like didn't really enjoy like being in the moment and being like, yeah, this sucks, but I'm around like a great group of guys, or I'm around a great group of people, you know? So if I go back 4 years to like the beginning of my college career and like with sports in particular, kind of just like embrace it all and like just enjoy the moment and kind of live in the moment and don't take anything for granted.
That's great. That is actually great advice. Living in the moment. I think we lose a lot. I think a lot of us lose that. I know I did. You know, I always, you know, if I had to go back and tell my 18-year-old self what to do, I would say live in the, you know, kind of be more present in the moment and be more self-accepting to who you are and what you are. Simply because, you know, don't try to be something you're, you know, at times I was trying to feel like I was being something I was something I wasn't, kind of when I look back on it, and just kind of be there in the present, like you said, Cruz. I think we always look ahead to what you want out in the future, as opposed to enjoying like this moment with the four of you and me. You know, I'm zoned in on it, and, you know, because in 10 minutes it'll be gone. And I think that's what we need to tell her. And that's what I would tell myself as well. I think that's great advice, Cruz, and so on. So anybody else have any comments, or we'll go to break, and then we have one last thing we want to talk about it's kind of fun. So anybody else? Once, twice, and see how much smoother and fun it runs without somebody just with a bald head and a yellow sweatshirt just saying, Anyway, I'm kidding, Rubio. We love you. You know that. Anyway, we're going to go to commercial, and we'll be right back with our last segment.
This tip explains how to use passphrases for extra security. What we call a password doesn't have to be a word at all. A whole phrase or sentence, a passphrase, offers more security. I will explain how and why you should use them. What is a passphrase? Using passphrases involves starting with a memorable phrase, and I'll explain in the next section, boiling down to a collection of letters, numbers, and symbols. How to create a passphrase? A passphrase is simply a phrase or sentence that you will use instead of word or set of characters. Most password systems don't allow the space character, so you'll typically capitalize the first letter of each word instead, or insert a punctuation mark such as the dash between words. The key to creating a strong passphrase for a given website is to use something that's meaningful to you, but that also would not be easily guessed. This tip for a great show called Decades is brought to you by Alex and Tech.
Alex, I got to thank you for that little added plug at the end of your tech tip. The great show, Decades. I appreciate that. Rubio appreciates that too, even though he's not with us. And if you're just joining us, Rubio's not with us because the raccoons that run his internet have left, and he's chasing after them tonight. So okay. This show is post Memorial Day. This was going to be a question that was kind of pre-Memorial Day, so that's why we're asking it. So, what is your favorite memory of your Memorial Day weekend, past or present, with your family or whatever? What is your favorite memory of Memorial Day weekend? And we'll start. We're going to go youngest to oldest. So go ahead, Cruz. What do you say?
The last couple of years have been pretty busy, so haven't got to make too many Memorial Day celebrations. But last year, me and my buddies, we went up to one of our buddies' grandparents' houses up in Northern California at a place called Lake Tulloch. And we just had a boys' trip out there for the weekend. It was about 12, 13 of us boys. And we just went out on the boat for the weekend, had some beverages, hung out together, made s'mores, just classic Americana style, just hot dogs,
awesome.
burgers. One specific memory is we were going inner tubing, and it was the first time I had gone inner tubing since I was probably like 9 or 10. And I just remember the last moment I hit a wave, and as I was going up, I remember being like, "Oh, this is gonna hurt." And I landed, and I don't remember landing. I just remember getting back in the boat and being like, "Oh, I am dead," and ended up having like a month worth like shoulder rehab, trying to get my shoulder back in place before season, trying to convince the coaches that I had injured it lifting and not inner tubing at Lake Tulloch with my buddies. But yeah, just going out to the lake, spending time with the buddies was a great memory for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great memory. How about you, Alex? What's your best memory?
Well, my best memory is my first tent camping trip with friends and kids back in '98. We went to some private camping place in Temecula Valley, California. It's kind of towards San Diego, and it was my first time, doing tent camping. We did, stayed in tents, did barbecue, and then we even visited some wineries, as far as I remember, in Temecula. It was fun and, a good experience.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. How about you, Craig? What's your kind of favorite memory from back?
Mostly when I was in uniform, because we always had a ceremony that we would do, and the senior ranking folks were always like the hosts, so it was pretty cool. So I remember one in particular at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, where we actually got to put a guy to rest in conjunction with Memorial Day ceremony. So we just made it one big, funeral, if you will, in honor of him, and we all knew him. So it's kind of, it was somber, but at the same time, being there for that, coincidentally, if you will, that was pretty cool.
Right.
So I'll never forget that, because it was pretty major, because we had the entire fanfare out there on the field. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great memory. Yeah, especially being able to it's like you said, it's somber, but it's also kind of you can memorialize your buddy that you laid to rest at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a special time of year, so it's special holiday. That's great. How about you, Bill? What do you say?
Well, I'm going to go back in the Wayback Machine and go back to my college days when we used to go to the turn one of the Indy 500, which was then the location of what's known as the Snake Pit. And the Snake Pit was very aptly named. It was party central, and all I can tell you is what happens in the Snake Pit stays in the Snake Pit.
There you go. That's how it should be. And I always enjoyed it. Memorial Day with our family was always kind of a special get together, because my grandfather's birthday was my dad's mom was on Memorial Day, was in the Memorial Day weekend, and he would always joke that because of his birthday we got the day off. So it was kind of fun, and it's a running joke today. He passed many years, 30-some plus years ago, but it's still kind of a special thought that his birthday falls in that weekend, and we can relive the memory, and we always had family get-togethers and so on. So it was always a good time. Well, guys, you guys did a great job tonight. I got to pick, I'm here. I got to pick a winner. And you know what I'm going to do? As always, we got to give the new guy, Craig is going to get the Decadian of the night. I know Rubio's sad because he's not going to get it, but hey, because he never will get it. But anyway, I want to thank all you guys. I know we were kind of short-staffed. You did a great job. I want to thank everybody that was out in X, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or wherever you might have watched it. Please, as we were talking about, have the conversations. If somebody's not looking right, ask them if they're okay. Be receptive to whatever they say, because that's how we're going to kind of battle this. That's the important thing that we need to remember. We need to all come together, man and woman and whomever, and help each other. So with that, we'll raise a glass. Thank you, gentlemen, for the show, and we'll see you next time.
See you, Sam.
Cheers.